In a small village, there lived a wealthy merchant named Ramesh. He owned the largest shop in the marketplace, selling grains, spices, and fine cloth. His shop was always full of customers, but not because of his kindness. Rather, because he was the only merchant with such a vast variety of goods. However, Ramesh was greedy and cunning. He used false weights to cheat customers, mixed stones in rice, and increased prices whenever he pleased. Despite his dishonesty, his wealth grew. His mansion stood tall at the heart of the village, with golden lamps lighting its grand halls. Yet no matter how rich he became, he was never satisfied. His greed only deepened. One evening, as the sun cast a golden glow over the village, an old woman entered his shop. She was frail, her skin wrinkled with age, and her clothes were torn and faded. Her eyes, though tired, held a plea of desperation. "Sir," she said in a trembling voice, "my son is sick, and I have no food to feed him. Could you spare just a handful of rice? I promise I will repay you." Ramesh glanced at her with a smirk. "No money, no rice," he said coldly. "I do business, not charity." The old woman's lips quivered, and her eyes welled with tears. She looked around at the sacks of rice stacked behind him, then back at Ramesh, hoping for mercy. But he turned away, uninterested in her suffering. With a heavy heart, she murmured, "One day you will understand that wealth is not everything." Ramesh laughed mockingly. "We will see about that," he said, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. The rise and the fall years passed, and Ramesh's fortune multiplied. He expanded his shop, hired more workers, and built an even bigger mansion. He believed his riches would never fade. But then, strange things began to happen. Rumors spread in the village that Ramesh's grains were infested with worms and his cloth tore within days. Customers who once filled his shop now hesitated, choosing to buy from smaller vendors instead. Business slowed, and frustration crept into Ramesh's heart. One night, a terrible fire broke out in his shop. Flames roared through the wooden structure, consuming everything: the sacks of rice, the bolts of silk, the gold he had hoarded. Villagers rushed to help, but the fire was too fierce. By morning, nothing remained but ashes. Ramesh stood among the ruins, his fine clothes covered in soot, his hands shaking with disbelief. Everything he had built, everything he had treasured, was gone in a single night. As days turned into weeks, his debts piled up. Without his shop, he had no income. Servants left, his mansion was seized by moneylenders, and soon Ramesh found himself on the streets, hungry, homeless, and alone. A knock on an unexpected door. One evening, weak from hunger, he knocked on the door of a small hut. His clothes were torn, his once-groomed hair was unkempt, and his hands trembled as he held out his empty bowl. The door creaked open, and standing before him was the same old woman he had once turned away. She looked at him for a long moment, her face calm but knowing. Ramesh, too, recognized her, and his heart filled with shame. Tears streamed down his face as he fell to his knees. "I was cruel to you," he whispered, "yet here I am, asking for kindness." The old woman sighed but did not hesitate. She stepped inside and returned with a bowl of warm rice and lentils. "Eat," she said gently. Ramesh took the bowl with shaking hands, unable to believe that the woman he had once refused was now the one saving him. He ate in silence, his heart heavy with guilt. As he finished, the old woman spoke, her voice firm yet kind. "Karma never forgets, but kindness can still save you." The lesson learned. From that day on, Ramesh changed. He worked honestly, treating people with fairness and respect. Slowly, he regained the villagers' trust. He started a small shop, not as grand as before, but one where he weighed grains fairly and never cheated anyone. Years later, he stood in the village square, distributing food to the poor, his hands steady, his heart light. Among the people, the old woman watched with a knowing smile. Ramesh had learned his lesson. What you give to the world the world gives back to you. Karma never forgets. So always choose kindness.